Welcome to Inspiro, where stories of courage and change come to life. Today we dive into the incredible journey of Ruby Bridges, a 7-year-old girl who didn't just integrate a school in New Orleans, but inspired the world. Chapter-specific context, e.g., today we'll see Ruby's first day at school, or today we celebrate Ruby's lasting legacy. If you love stories that uplift and motivate, hit that subscribe button and ring the bell so you don't miss a moment of Ruby's journey. Let's get started. Tylertown, Mississippi, September 8, 1954. In the stifling heat of a late summer morning, Ruby Nell Bridges took her first breath in a small wooden shack. Her mother, Lucille, a sharecropper's daughter, cradled the newborn close to her chest. Her eyes were tired from a long labor, but her face glowed with hope. "This is our girl," Lucille whispered. "She's going to do something big one day." Ruby's father, Abon, a Korean war veteran and laborer, looked at his daughter and smiled. "Our greatest hope," he said softly. The Bridges family was poor. They had no electricity, no running water. Lucille and Abon toiled in the cotton fields from dawn to dusk, but their earnings barely fed their growing family. Yet their home was filled with love. Ruby, the eldest of 5 siblings, spent her early years running through her grandparents' fields. She climbed trees, played in the mud with her younger sister, and listened to stories in her mother's lap at night. Lucille often read Bible tales of courage and faith. "Ruby," she'd say, "you never have to be afraid. God is always with you." But the shadow of racism loomed over Mississippi. Separate schools, stores, and buses for black people. Ruby didn't understand these rules. Once, while out with her grandmother, she was stopped from drinking at a whites-only fountain. "Why, Grandma?" she asked innocently. Her grandmother held her hand tightly. "Because some folks see us as different, but you're just as good as anyone else." Ruby nodded, but questions swirled in her young mind. In 1958, when Ruby was 4, the family decided to seek better opportunities in New Orleans. "We need good schools for our kids," Lucille insisted. Abon had been promised a job in the city. Packing their belongings into an old car, they left Tylertown behind. Ruby peered out the window, watching the dusty roads fade away. She didn't know it then, but this journey would change her life forever. In New Orleans, a new chapter was about to begin, one that would not only shape Ruby, but also alter the course of American history. The humid summer of 1958. Ruby, now 4 years old, lived with her family in a cramped house in the narrow streets of New Orleans. After the open fields of Tylertown, the city's noise and crowds felt strange to her. The honking cars, neighbors' laughter, and distant jazz tunes, it was all new. Their new home was a tiny 2-room house with thin walls and a leaky roof during rain. Yet Lucille made it their own. "This is our fresh start," she told the children, spreading a colorful cloth over an old table. Ruby grew to love city life. She played with her siblings Milton, Malcolm, Joetta, and newborn Christopher in the alley. Their favorite game was double Dutch jump rope. Ruby's small legs bounced quickly, and the neighborhood kids cheered. "Ruby, you're flying!" her friend Mary shouted. Ruby laughed and jumped faster. But during games, she often glanced at her mother, who watched from the window with a smile. Lucille's face was tired, but her eyes held a dream of better life for her children. Abon worked days at a gas station and nights as a janitor. His wages were low, and New Orleans' high costs strained the family. Lucille took up cleaning houses in the neighborhood. "We need to get our kids to good schools," she told Abon. But schools for black children in New Orleans were segregated. Ruby attended a segregated kindergarten with worn books and broken desks. Still, she loved learning. She enjoyed spelling words and hearing stories. Her teacher, Miss Johnson, said, "Ruby, there's a spark in your eyes. You're going to do something special." But racism was everywhere in the city. One day, Ruby and Lucille went to a grocery store. A white woman at the counter glared at Ruby and snapped, "Don't bring your kids here." Lucille gripped Ruby's hand tightly and replied, "My daughter goes where she pleases." Ruby didn't understand why the woman was so angry. At home, she asked, "Mama, why doesn't she like me?" Lucille pulled her onto her lap. "Some people look at the color of your skin, Ruby, but your heart is bigger than theirs." Ruby nodded, but her heart felt heavy. That year, Ruby began attending church. Every Sunday she went with Lucille to pray. The hymns and the preacher's words gave her courage. Once the preacher said, "Don't let fear rule you. God will show you the way." Ruby tucked those words into her small heart. She didn't know that her courage would soon be tested. By 1959, whispers of change stirred in New Orleans. The Supreme Court's 1954 Brown v. Board of Education decision had declared school segregation illegal, but Louisiana resisted. The NAACP began planning to enroll black children in white schools. Lucille heard about it and talked to Abon. "Ruby deserves a better school," she said. Abon was worried. "Lucille, it could be dangerous. People aren't ready." But Lucille was determined. "Our children's future is at stake," she insisted. Ruby didn't understand these discussions. She was happy in her little world-jumping rope, listening to her mother's stories and making friends at school. But in early 1960, a new opportunity arose. The NAACP selected Ruby for an entrance exam to determine if she could attend a white school. Ruby didn't know that this test was about more than education. It was a battle that would change history. Early 1960. The streets of New Orleans buzzed with heat and a faint sense of hope. Ruby, now 6, returned from kindergarten to play jump rope in the alley. But her mother, Lucille, had bigger things on her mind. The NAACP had chosen Ruby for a special entrance exam. The test would decide if she could attend William Frantz Elementary School, a school reserved for white children until now. Lucille knew this wasn't just about school. It was a fight that mattered for their community and the entire nation. One evening, Lucille and Abon sat in the kitchen. Ruby played with her siblings in the next room. "The NAACP says Ruby has a chance," Lucille said, her voice firm. Abon furrowed his brow. "Lucille, this won't be easy. People will be angry. We could get threats." Lucille took his hand. "Abon, our daughter deserves the education she's entitled to. If we're scared, nothing will change." Abon fell silent. He didn't want to put Ruby in danger, but Lucille's resolve moved him. Ruby didn't fully grasp these conversations. One day, Lucille sat her down. "Ruby, you're going to take a special test," she said with a smile. "If you pass, you'll go to a new school." Ruby's eyes lit up. "Will there be new books, Mama?" she asked. Lucille laughed, but her heart was heavy. "Yes, baby, and so much more." She hugged Ruby, silently praying for her daughter's strength. The test day arrived. Ruby wore a clean dress, her hair tied with a ribbon. "Just do your best, Ruby," Lucille said. The exam was in an unfamiliar building filled with black and white children. Ruby noticed some parents looked worried, others angry. She sat in a large room where a stern woman handed her paper and a pencil. The questions were hard math, words, puzzles. Ruby didn't know the test was designed to fail most black children, but her mind was sharp. She tackled each question with care. Weeks later, an NAACP representative visited their home. "Ruby passed," he said, smiling. "Shall attend William Frantz School." Lucille's eyes welled up. She hugged Ruby tightly. "I'm so proud of you, baby." But Abon's face was grim. "Lucille, are we doing the right thing?" he asked. Lucille replied, "We have to. This isn't just for Ruby, it's for every child." Tension was rising in New Orleans. White parents protested school integration, taking to the streets. Newspapers reported Louisiana's attempts to block desegregation. Whispers spread in Ruby's neighborhood. Some neighbors congratulated Lucille, but others warned her. "Be careful, Lucille. People might target your family." Lucille nodded, but her resolve didn't waver. Ruby sensed something was different, but she stayed in her own world. She went to church, where the preacher said one Sunday, "You have to fight for what's right. God will give you strength." Ruby held those words close. She didn't know that on November 14, 1960, She would become part of a battle that would echo through history. The first day of school was approaching, and Ruby's small heart, unknowingly, was moving toward a monumental change. November 14th, 1960. The morning sun cast a soft glow over New Orleans streets, but a strange tension hung over Ruby's home. 6-year-old Ruby was dressed in her best blue dress, white socks and shiny shoes. Lucille tied a red ribbon in her hair and said, "Ruby, today's a special day. Just keep smiling." Ruby nodded, but she didn't understand the gravity in her mother's voice. "Is there a party at school, Mama?" she asked innocently. Lucille patted her cheek. "No, baby, but you're going to do something big." Outside, 4 U.S. marshals stood waiting, tall, serious men in dark coats and hats that looked odd to Ruby. "Who are they?" she asked Lucille. "They're here to keep you safe," Lucille replied, her voice tinged with fear. Ruby shrugged. She thought it might be a parade like Mardi Gras. She climbed happily into their black car. But as they drove toward William Frantz Elementary School, the mood shifted. A crowd of hundreds gathered outside the school. Angry voices shouted, waving signs and hurling racial slurs. "No blacks here," a woman screamed. "Go back," a man threatened. Ruby peeked out the window. She didn't understand. "Mama, are they mad?" she asked. Lucille gripped her hand tightly. "Don't listen to them, Ruby. Just look ahead." Questions swirled in Ruby's small mind. Why didn't these people want her? The marshals led Ruby out of the car and up the school steps. The crowd roared louder. Some threw tomatoes and eggs, splattering the marshals' coats. "Ruby, keep walking," one marshal said. Ruby lowered her head and took small steps forward. She wasn't scared. She remembered her mother's words. "Keep smiling." She held a faint smile as if she were at a festival. Inside, the hallways were empty. Ruby was taken to a classroom where a white teacher, Barbara Henry, waited. "Hello, Ruby. I'm your teacher," Barbara said with a warm smile. Ruby shyly replied, "Hello, miss." But the classroom was empty. White parents had pulled their children from school. Ruby was the only student that day. Barbara began teaching letters, numbers, stories. Ruby listened closely, but her mind wandered to the shouts outside. At the end of the day, the marshals drove Ruby home. Lucille hugged her tightly. "You did so well, baby." But Ruby saw tears in her mother's eyes. "Mama, why were they so angry?" she asked. Lucille answered, "Because they're scared of change, Ruby. But you changed something today." Ruby nodded, but she didn't understand what she'd done. She'd just gone to school. That night, Ruby prayed as her mother had taught her. "God, give those people love," she said. She didn't know that her small step was a giant leap for New Orleans and all of America. The second week of November 1960. Ruby got ready each morning the same way: blue dress, white socks, red ribbon. But now she knew the path to school wasn't easy. The crowd outside William Frantz School hadn't thinned. People still shouted, threatened, and hurled racial slurs. U.S. Marshals drove her to school each day, and Ruby climbed the steps in their protection. "Ruby, just look ahead," a marshal often said. Ruby walked with her head down, but her heart felt heavy. "Mama, will they always be angry?" she asked Lucille one day. Lucille replied, "No, baby. Things will get better with time. Just don't give up." Inside the school, Ruby's world was small, just her teacher Barbara Henry, and an empty classroom. White parents kept their children away, leaving Ruby the only student. But Barbara never let it weigh on Ruby. She greeted her with a smile each day. "Good morning, Ruby. Let's learn something new," she said, as if the room were full. Ruby liked Barbara's warmth. Her blue eyes and soft voice felt like home. Barbara taught Ruby letters, math, and stories. She sat by Ruby's desk, showed her books, and asked questions. "Ruby, what did you like about this story?" she'd ask. Ruby answered shyly, "I liked the girl who wasn't afraid." Barbara smiled. "You're like her, Ruby." Ruby didn't understand why she was special, but Barbara's words gave her courage. One day, Barbara gave Ruby paper and crayons. "Let's make something," she said. Ruby drew a house with her family and a big sun. "It's beautiful," Barbara said. "Is this your home?" Ruby nodded. "Yes, miss, but here everyone's happy." Barbara's face grew serious. She knew Ruby's family was struggling. Abon had lost his job and shopkeepers refused to sell to them. But Barbara didn't tell Ruby. She wanted her smile to stay. Outside, tension in New Orleans was growing. Protests against school integration intensified. Some white families left the school for good, and reports of violence against black residents spread. Ruby's neighborhood was uneasy. One night, Lucille prayed at church. "God, give my daughter strength," she said. Neighbors brought food and clothes, but some warned her. "Lucille, be careful. People might hurt you." Lucille replied, "I'll fight for my daughter." Ruby didn't fully grasp the situation, but she heard the shouts outside. One day, she asked Barbara, "Miss, am I bad?" Barbara hugged her. "No, Ruby, you're wonderful. Some people are just scared." That night, Ruby added to her prayer, "God, help those people not be afraid." Her innocence and courage amazed Barbara. At the week's end, Barbara gave Ruby a small gift book about a brave girl. "This is for you," she said. Ruby clutched it to her chest. "I'll read it every day," she promised. Barbara smiled. "Ruby, you're already writing your own story." Ruby didn't know her story was spreading across the country, and people were talking about her courage. December 1960. The chilly New Orleans air carried the scent of tension. Ruby, now 6, went to William Frantz School each day, shielded by U.S. marshals. The crowd outside had thinned slightly, but the anger hadn't faded. People still shouted, "No blacks here!" Ruby had learned to tune them out. She climbed the school steps with small strides, keeping a faint smile on her lips. "Mama says smiling gives you strength," she thought. But at night, alone, the shouts echoed in her dreams. At school, Ruby's world revolved around Barbara Henry. Barbara brought new stories, math problems, and colorful paper each day. "Ruby, let's make a garden today," she said one morning, and Ruby drew flowers on paper. Barbara praised her. "Your flowers are prettier than real ones." Ruby laughed, but her heart was heavy. "Miss, will the other kids ever come?" she asked. Barbara's face grew serious. "Yes, Ruby, one day." But she knew the white parents' protests were far from over. One afternoon, a new visitor arrived, Robert Coles, a psychiatrist who studied children's mental health. The NAACP sent him to check on Ruby, to see how she was coping with the stress. Robert was kind, with deep, thoughtful eyes. "Hello, Ruby," he said. "I'd like to talk to you." Ruby nodded shyly. They sat in a small schoolroom. Robert asked, "What do you think about when you come to school?" Ruby replied, "I think about what Mama says. She says God is with me." Robert smiled. Ruby's innocence and courage astonished him. Robert met Ruby several times. He asked her to draw, and Ruby sketched her family, church, and school. One drawing showed the crowd, but with smiles on their faces. "What's this?" Robert asked. "I want them to be happy," Ruby said. Robert noted that Ruby's heart was free of hate. She felt fear, but she didn't let it rule her. "You're very strong, Ruby," he said. Ruby shrugged. "I just want to go to school," she replied. Outside, New Orleans was growing more troubled. Ruby's family received threats. One night, someone scrawled, "Go away," outside their home. Abon was furious, but Lucille calmed him. "Well, stay," she said, "for Ruby." Neighbors helped some brought food, others kept watch at night. But the tension was mounting. Lucille prayed every night, "God, keep my daughter safe." Ruby didn't know the full extent of the threats, but she saw her parents worry. One day she asked Lucille, "Mama, are we doing something wrong?" Lucille hugged her tightly. "No, baby. You're doing what's right. The world needs your courage." That night, Ruby prayed, "God, give Mama and Daddy strength too." Her small prayer was bigger than the restless streets of New Orleans. January 1961. The cold New Orleans mornings followed the same routine, Ruby heading to William Frantz School under U.S. Marshals' protection. But something was shifting. The crowd outside was smaller. Some protesters stopped shouting, standing quietly with signs. Ruby asked a marshal, "Are they less angry now?" The marshal smiled. "Maybe, Ruby. Your courage is making them think." Ruby shrugged. She didn't know her small presence was sparking a wave of change in New Orleans. Inside the school, Ruby's world brightened. One day, Barbara Henry announced excitedly, "Ruby, we have new friends in class today." 2 white children, a boy and a girl, joined the classroom. Their mother, Mrs. Johnson, supported integration and brought her kids back. The boy was Tommy, the girl Sarah. Both were shy, but Ruby greeted them with a smile. "Hi, Ruby," she said. Tommy mumbled, "Hi." Sarah just nodded. Barbara taught them together, and Ruby felt her lonely world grow a little bigger. But change wasn't easy. Tommy and Sarah's parents faced threats too. Some neighbors called Mrs. Johnson a traitor. Still, they stayed. Ruby noticed Tommy sometimes flinched at the shouts outside. One day she asked, "Are you scared?" Tommy nodded. "A little, but Mum says it's right." Ruby patted his hand. "Mums are right," she said. Barbara smiled, seeing Ruby's innocent courage inspire others. At home, Ruby's family struggled. Abon couldn't find work, and Lucille's cleaning jobs barely covered expenses. Shopkeepers still hesitated to sell to them. One night, Ruby overheard her parents whispering in the kitchen. "We might have to leave the city," Abon said. Lucille replied, "No, Abon, we'll stay for Ruby. She's been through too much." Ruby tiptoed back to her room. She didn't understand why they'd leave, but she prayed, "God, give my mama and daddy courage." At church, Ruby found new support. Some white and black families began backing integration. One Sunday, a white woman, Mrs. Carter, told Lucille, "Your daughter's teaching us what courage means." Lucille's eyes teared up. "She's just going to school," she said. Mrs. Carter replied, "She's making history." Ruby overheard and wondered, what's history? Her small heart just wanted friends and learning. One day, Barbara gave Ruby a new project. "Let's write a story," she said. Ruby wrote about a girl who makes everyone friends. "That's you, Ruby," Barbara said. Ruby laughed. "I'm just Ruby," she replied. But her story and courage were spreading beyond New Orleans. Newspapers published Ruby's pictures, and people began talking about her bravery. Ruby didn't know she had become a glimmer of change. February 1961. The New Orleans winter was softening, and warmth was creeping into Ruby's life. More children were returning to William Frantz School. After Tommy and Sarah, 2 more white kids, James and Linda, joined the class. Their parents supported integration despite neighbors' anger. Ruby was thrilled with her new friends. "Miss, our class is getting big," she told Barbara Henry. Barbara smiled. "Yes, Ruby. It's the magic of your courage." Ruby laughed, unaware that her small smile was transforming the school's atmosphere. In class, Ruby and the new kids learned together. Tommy loved math. Sarah adored stories. James was mischievous and often made Ruby giggle. One day, he crafted a paper flower for her. "This is for you," he said shyly. Ruby tucked it into her book. "I love flowers," she replied. Linda was quiet, but started sitting next to Ruby. Barbara noticed Ruby's innocence was uniting the children. "You're a bridge, Ruby," she said one day. Ruby asked, "What's a bridge?" Barbara laughed. "Something that connects people." Outside school, Ruby's family was under strain. Threats were escalating. One night, someone threw a rock through their window, shattering the glass. Abon rushed outside, furious, but no one was there. Lucille hugged Ruby. "Don't be scared, baby," she said, her voice trembling. The next day, neighbors helped fix the window, and some began keeping watch at night. But the stress was wearing the family down. Abon told Lucille, "We might have to pull Ruby from school." Lucille replied, "No, Abon. What she's doing isn't just for yous, it's for everyone." Ruby didn't know the full extent of the threats, but she saw her parents worry. One night she asked Lucille, "Mama, should I stop going to school?" Lucille held her face. "No, Ruby, that's your place. Your courage is changing the world." Ruby nodded, and that night she prayed, "God, keep my family safe." Meanwhile, Ruby's story was spreading beyond New Orleans. Newspapers wrote about her, and radio stations discussed her bravery. One day, a journalist visited the school and took Ruby's picture. "You're very special," he said. Ruby replied shyly, "I just go to school." But her photo appeared nationwide. People were inspired by her innocent courage. At church, a white woman told Lucille, "Your daughter's teaching us that love is bigger than hate." Lucille's eyes welled up. Ruby's story brought support too. Letters and small gifts arrived from across the country. One woman sent Ruby a doll with a note, "You're my hero." Ruby kept the doll on her bed, hugging it each night. She didn't know her story was becoming part of the civil rights movement. She just wanted to make friends and learn in her small world. March 1961. The gentle warmth of spring was returning to New Orleans, and the atmosphere at William Frantz School was slowly shifting. Ruby was no longer the only student. Besides Tommy, Sarah, James, and Linda, more children joined the class. Some white parents, once protesters, now sent their kids back. Ruby was delighted. "Miss, our class is really big now," she told Barbara Henry. Barbara replied, "Yes, Ruby, you made this possible." Ruby nodded shyly, unaware that her courage was uniting the school. In class, Ruby and her friends played and learned. One day, Barbara taught them a song, and Ruby sang in her sweet voice. Sarah clapped. "Ruby, you're a star," she said. Ruby laughed, but her mind lingered on the outside world. Some protesters still stood outside with signs, and Ruby heard them call her wrong. "Miss, am I wrong?" she asked Barbara. Barbara hugged her. "No, Ruby, you're right. You're teaching love and courage." Ruby's family still faced hardships, but support was growing. Letters and gifts poured in from across the country. One day, an entire school class sent Ruby cards saying, "Ruby, you're our hero." Lucille read them and hugged Ruby. "See, baby, how many people love you," she said. Ruby smiled. "I love them too." But threats continued. One night, someone dumped trash outside their home. Abon cleaned it up angrily, but Lucille calmed him. "Well, keep going," she said. At church, Ruby found more support. White and black families now prayed together. One Sunday, the pastor called Ruby to the stage. "This little girl is teaching us what courage is," he said. The crowd applauded. Ruby blushed, but lifted her head and smiled. She didn't know her story was also inspiring art. That year, a famous artist, Norman Rockwell, began a painting inspired by Ruby's story. Titled, "The Problem We All Live With," it depicted a young black girl walking to school with US Marshals. A wall behind her scrawled with racial slurs. Rockwell had seen Ruby's photos and captured her innocent courage on canvas. The painting wasn't finished yet, but it was already sparking talk. A journalist told Lucille, "Your daughter's becoming part of art." Lucille replied, "She's just going to school." Ruby was unaware of this. She was happy in her small world. One day, Barbara gave her a new projecto draw her dreams. Ruby drew a school where all kids laughed together. "This is my dream," she said. Barbara's eyes teared up. "Ruby, you're making that dream come true," she said. Ruby's courage was becoming a picture, not just in New Orleans, but across the nation. May 1961. Summer was creeping into New Orleans, and Ruby's first school year at William Frantz was drawing to a close. The classroom now buzzed with children's laughter and chatter. Ruby's friends, Tommy, Sarah, James, Linda, and some new kids studied and played with her. Protests outside had dwindled, A few people still held signs, but their voices were quieter. Ruby asked Barbara Henry one day, "Miss, is everything okay now?" Barbara smiled. "Not yet, Ruby, but you've made it better." Ruby nodded, unaware that her courage had changed the school forever. The last day of school was special. Barbara threw a small party for the kids. The table held paper flowers, colorful balloons, and homemade cake. Ruby ate a slice and giggled. "Miss, this is my best day," she said. Barbara gave her a small gift, a diary, inscribed with, "Ruby, keep writing your story." Ruby clutched it to her chest. "I will, miss," she promised. Tommy and Sarah made Ruby a card that read, "You're our best friend." Ruby's eyes sparkled. At home, Ruby's family was slowly recovering. Support from across the country helped. Some sent money, and a local church helped Abon land a new job at a factory. Lucille still cleaned houses, but her face looked less tired. One night, Lucille told Ruby, "You've given us a reason to hold our heads high, baby." Ruby asked, "Mama, what did I do?" Lucille laughed. "You showed courage. That's the biggest thing." But threats hadn't stopped entirely. Sometimes strangers lingered near Ruby's house, and Lucille locked the door tightly at night. Neighbors continued keeping watch. One day, Ruby saw a stranger near their home. "Mama, who was that?" she asked. Lucille replied, "Nobody, baby. Focus on your studies." But Ruby's small heart knew things weren't fully safe. Ruby's story had become famous nationwide. People called her the little brave one. At the end of the school year, a journalist interviewed Ruby and Lucille. "Ruby, weren't you scared?" he asked. Ruby replied, "A little, but Mama said God was with me." The journalist asked Lucille, "How did you let your daughter take such a dangerous path?" Lucille answered, "Because I wanted my daughter to be free." Their words appeared in newspapers, inspiring more people. As the school year ended, Ruby wrote in her diary's first page, "I made friends at school. I learned that being brave can make things okay." She didn't know her story had become a key part of the civil rights movement. She was just a 7-year-old girl who loved her friends, family, and school. But her courage had brought one beginning to an end and laid the foundation for a new one.